Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll take a look at all the home teams. We'll talk college basketball. We'll talk college baseball. We'll talk about the New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Pelicans. We've got a great panel to break it down. Both of these guys are the voices for their respective teams. Jude Young of WGSO Radio and also the voice of the UNO Privateers. Gus Katengell of ESPN 100.3 FM here in New Orleans, and the voice of the Tulane Green Wave women's basketball team. So we're in great company tonight with these two gentlemen. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Always appreciate you guys coming down and joining us on the show.
Always a pleasure.
We start off letting folks know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. Of course, CrestCitySports.com is the go-to website for anybody that loves sports in this town. Jude, tell us all about everything you got going.
No doubt about it. We start with CrescentCitySports.com as we continue to follow high school sports, not just high school football, all year round. And we've had some recent streams, including wrestling, as well as soccer in the postseason. Now Ken Trahan will be over in Bossier City for the state wrestling finals, which are mostly local schools here in New Orleans. So we'll have the best coverage as Ken will be tapped in on Friday and Saturday for that. So year-round, you know to follow us and get everything that you need coverage-wise at CrescentCitySports.com. We also have commentary and coverage of the Saints, Pelicans, and the college scene as well, with college baseball starting up, which we'll talk about tonight. You mentioned my broadcasting with UNO and trying to repeat as Southland Conference champions, but it looks like it's going to be tough down the stretch. But excitingly, it's Southeast Louisiana-based schools that are really competing at the top of the league this year, and I have my radio show at WGS. So busy this time of year, so I'm on Tuesdays and Friday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. if you want to talk a little sports with me directly.
You got to check out the show. Really good show. Gus, welcome back. Always good to have you, my friend. And you're as busy as Jude is.
It's fun, and I was doing Tulane women's basketball and sitting next to Lenny when you co-hosted. I was watching off y'all's website, Brother Martin soccer taking on. So the streaming's great. I love that, and it's so great to have a local website that focuses on the prep and stuff. Because a lot of times we get caught up with all the pro teams, the college teams, and everything, and unless when you get to signing day and everything, you realize just how much talent is everywhere, and it's in all the sports too, man. And it's so great to actually see from 20 years now in college, from when I was at Brother Martin, 94 to 90, at 94, just, lacrosse teams, you got soccer teams everywhere, you got so many different sports now in the prep field. It's awesome what you guys are doing up there. But
and you're doing a great job as well. ESPN 100.3.
We'll see how that goes. There's so much to talk about. Back to 3 hours, 12 to 3, which is unfortunate because I can't listen to that first hour that you have. Here. But it is. It's one of those seasons that's really past where there is no break. And what's great about college baseball, and obviously it's so great starting this weekend, is you have football, and the love for football in the state is like none other. And until college basketball, as you mentioned UNO, and I know we're the home for Nichols, and to sort of see that battle, it's kind of fun to see that happen because I want to see, and I love what Will Wade's doing. We'll get into that here because college baseball is the stuff, man. It's great to sort of see so many teams that consistently go into regional play, super regional, obviously LSU in the College World Series. So the love in Southeast Louisiana is it's sports is all year round. There's always something to talk about.
Fantastic. Guys, let's start with college basketball. Let's start with the Southland, because that looks like that's going to be the conference where we're going to see a team get into the NCAAs. Now there's talk maybe LSU gets into the NIT. We'll see what's going to happen down the line there. But there's going to be some tournament teams coming out of the Southland. And we'll start with you, Jude, again, the voice of the UNO Privateers. Talk about that battle, which seems like if you're not paying attention, the standings are shifting on a daily basis.
No question about it. And last year, it was congested at the top, 4 or 5 teams competing down the stretch for a title. We're having the same situation this year. UNO happy to be involved in that again with, in many ways, a different team. But what we're seeing from Nichols and Southeastern are veteran teams that have built up in 2 different ways to put themselves in a position perhaps to be the best contenders for the title from the state this year. Nichols is atop the standings. They have 8 seniors, including 4 key transfers. Roddy Peters might be the player of the year in the conference. Be able to do that with transfers who have bounced around a little bit but have high D1 talent and put it together like Richie Riley has in his second year, it's remarkable. He's a coach in his early 30s, and he may pull this thing off. To get that kind of chemistry, his team's playing exceedingly well, but they have all of their games except 1 left in the regular season on the road, and that home game is against UNO. Southeastern, on the other hand, Jay Ladner's a Mississippi guy. He won championships on the high school level, won a junior college national championship, and has built up Southeastern where they haven't experienced winning in at least a decade. Marlon Viola Jr., the leader there, a Helen Cox kid who is a little spitfire at about 5'9", with a headband flying around, and his teammates feed off of that. And last night they defeated UNO. They were fired up and went up 25 points because it was the biggest game of the Ladner era in at least a decade on campus. UNO came back and made it a 2-possession game, not able to pull it off. There'll be a rematch there, so UNO gets to see both of those teams again. Any of the 3 can go to Katy and get that automatic bid, but in the past decade, Stephen F. Austin's been the best team in the league. They've got 20 wins already, but I believe any of the 3 Louisiana teams from our region can compete with them over in Texas and win a title. It's going to be fun down the stretch these next 3 hectic weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. Gus, as you mentioned, ESPN 100.3 FM is the voice of the Nicholls State Colonels. Talk a little bit about the Southland and some great basketball is being played right now.
Just to kind of echo what he said, we had Brian Johnson on, the voice of the Colonels too, and he just constantly is talking about just in the game. It was earlier this week too. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 different teams that are in there, and if you lose, you could go from first to third to fourth. But I love the fact, just to his point, that you're seeing so many teams having to contend or can contend. We're talking like solid. But I mean, we saw the excitement last year with UNO. I mean, from the TV to everyone was following. I know I was glued.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the stream or how to watch it on ESPN, the tournament in Katy, and seeing and wanting them to go to the tournament. It was great to see that, because I honestly do think, and I'm sure you agree with me here, I can't stand when people go, nobody cares about basketball here. It's just, you haven't had winning, and you haven't had people talking about it and presenting it. You have tremendous talent that has come from Louisiana and has played in the NBA or in the college. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid, and I just turned 42, but I remember going to the Dome and watching LSU take on Georgetown and all. I mean, going to the Dome to watch that. And I could name the names on the players. So if you win and there's caring, people will watch it and everything. And it's like baseball. When you have, I mean, think about it. Anywhere else in the country, college baseball, it's, I guess we have to, fill a team and field one, and here's the stadium. Some schools don't even have lights. Right. Whereas here in the South, it's a money-making sport. I mean, Nichols just added upgrades to their baseball stadium. I know we talked to Coach Dean on the show earlier this week. He's excited about now getting Louisiana kids and wanting to go up there and, kind of build. And that stadium's kind of gone over a little renovation stuff. It's great to sort of see all of that. So, but back to the Southland and just seeing all the basketball is going. They got new court over there, Nichols. They're excited. So when money's starting to be invested in programs, that means there's excitement. That means fans are going. And I love crosstown rivalries or, interstate rivalries, however you want to call it, because it's just great. And a lot of times we do tend to focus, unfortunately, on SEC or AC, the big conferences. We forget, especially on signing day, just last Wednesday. A lot of these kids, a lot of these high schools, 10, 12, 14, from Edna Carr and stuff like that are going to colleges. Yeah, we focus on LSU and where they go, but Nichols and some of these other football programs, that's where they're going. They're getting a chance to get out. They're getting a chance to play college football and have an education.
Yeah, let's stay with you for a second. Let's switch to Tulane. Mike Dunleavy comes in, looked like he had really kind of turned things around. Things have been a little bit shaky lately, but you got to like what he's done in just year 2 of the program.
Well, you can definitely see just the direction where it's going. And I think once you start seeing a few of his classes come in, I'm real interested to sort of see. Because that style of basketball, when they were playing earlier, that NBA sort of style, it's going to help you get recruits. It's going to help you kind of do that. The other thing that you see, though, is just the consistency level. I mean, that's you have guys that can score. You have, and Melvin Frazier, a guy that some scouts have been out looking at and stuff. So you wonder how that gets to here when you're not used to it. And at the end of the day, as we all know with teams that we cover or even talk about, we talk about the Pels. It's learning to win. And learning to win, you have a handful of steps. That's how do you deal with success? How do you deal with the added attention? Sure. Now you're in the sportscast. Now Jude's talking about you. I'm talking about you. And how do you handle that? And they've struggled to do that. But they have the talents, just doing it consistently. But it's going to be interesting next year. You're losing Cam Reynolds. You're losing Frazier probably. So let's see where he goes. Or does Frazier come back to maybe up his stock next year and maybe become a lottery pick? So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, you like Dunleavy, and you like the fact that he can recruit not just nationally but internationally, and of course his reputation. So you got to believe Tulane's on the right track. Your thoughts on the Greenies?
The funny thing about it is last year I think Dunleavy was a bit surprised, if he were being honest with you, about the differences in college basketball, and with a Tulane program that hadn't been winning, so they bottomed out and won 6 games. Now starting to get a feel for what he needs to do, bringing that NBA concept to a league, the American, where if you look at the athletes in the top half of this conference, they've got NBA level athletes. They've got long guys on the perimeter who can handle the ball, the Shake Milton types who become first round picks at SMU. Just an example of that. And SMU struggling this year to compete with the top 4 in the league. This is the league where you have to get that kind of talent first and foremost, so there's some growing pains there. He was fortunate enough to inherit Frazier and Reynolds, who are 2 players who can succeed at that level. And it shows that you can be a successful player and get NBA looks like Frazier is. He may wind up being a first-round pick. Once that happens, just getting the looks, if he is drafted, that opens doors, and that tells people you can go to Tulane and get drafted, which when you're on that level of college basketball, it's equally as important as saying that you can win. Kids want to believe they can go to the league, and Dunleavy has the pedigree, but then once he has the proof, that combination can make Tulane a team that can compete in a conference where there's no nights off.
Yeah. Talk about Will Wade and what he's done at LSU. Again, started off, looked like this was going to be a year where maybe they might challenge for the NCAA tournament. As they've gotten into conference play, they've leveled off a bit. Got a recruiting class coming in that's one of the top in the nation. You got to love what he's done with just the holdovers that he has had, and then the players that he's brought in. But again, I think both of you guys have mentioned that. You got to learn how to win, and you got to like what Wade has done thus far. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of finish out the year. Your thoughts on Will Wade and LSU?
Things were bad under Johnny Jones, and when the Ben Simmons experiment failed, the discord in the program showed the weaknesses of what he was trying to build there. There wasn't the idea of building a team. You can go ahead and get NBA level talent, but they've got to play together. And Simmons is kind of a sharing type of player, who's doing really well in the NBA, so it showed the failings of what was going on behind the scenes. Now a guy in Will Wade comes in and he's putting his mark on the program year 1. Fortunately, Tremont Waters came in as a freshman and really upgraded their lead guard spot. They had to have it in order to be competitive this year, and they had some impressive performances in non-conference, beating the Michigans and the Houstons of the world. And they've been up and down in the SEC, which has gotten better because teams are investing in big money coaches and they want to win now at that level. But what Wade's been able to do and put his imprint on the program, he's had to suspend some kids. They're probably not going to come back. I think it's up to 4 now. He's also opening the doors for his players. And Javonte Smart from Scotlandville, getting the best player in the state that all the top programs, the K's wanted, the Kentuckys, the Kansases, you got to get those type of guys. But he's going around and getting 5 stars from around the country. So he has the connections, a young coach in his, he's 34, with that kind of pedigree already, behind the scenes and in the AAU circuit. His ability to do that's remarkable, and he seems to be able to bring it all together and get those kids to play his style, so he might be able to win right away next year. And when we watch this FBI investigation, it's about to affect a lot of programs, and if you believe the reports, some big-time SEC programs. That could allow LSU to start making it look like the Dale Brown era again in a hurry.
Well, that would be an incredible turnaround. Your thoughts on what Will Wade has done?
I think twice already on the show I've said the following. A, can he be the head coach of the Pelicans? B, is it too soon to give him a life-term contract? And it's because your eyes don't deceive you. And we've covered sports long enough where you can just get a sense or a feel. Guy gets it, right? We do it with players. You have the hit factor. He just gets it. I like the fact that he gets angry when they win, but he didn't think they played well enough. I loved, right before a big win this season, he didn't like practice the night before, so he hasn't practiced twice instead of a shoot-around, and then go and play a huge game and win. You just don't see that. No. And when you speak to people or spoke to people before the season started, everyone's like, 6, 7 wins.
No, yeah,
it's
Agreed.
It's walk-ons. It's you don't have the talent. Let's just see what happens. And instead, he's reinvigorated the program. I mean, you're excited about it. I'm looking to see forward to it. I know they don't have the talent, but when you see players that don't have the, and I've always said this, a fan base will support a program or a team if they play hard, right? I mean, it's the number one thing we argue about when it comes to the Pelicans.
Sure.
You can't control whether or not your shots go in one night or not. You can control your effort. You can control how hard you play defense. You can control your energy on a nightly basis, and that's what he's been saying. So when you see them be competitive, I get it. You look at other teams, they're just bigger and more athletic. Guys are dunking everywhere. But you see his little guys, they're playing together as a team. They look like the school of fish going around the arc and playing that 2-3 zone. I'm like, this is great. Coaching matters. And in college basketball, if you can coach, you can win. And I love it. I think it's exciting. And to his point, when you can go get players, especially in the you just haven't heard that ever. I mean, not ever, but in a long, long time where the top player in the state staying here, he's choosing here, because let's be honest, right? Kentucky or Kansas or them are calling me. I mean, Duke, I might go there, but Kentucky's had issues. I mean, they've dropped out of the top 25 on and off. So I think you're starting to maybe see, and it's cyclical, maybe the pendulum's swinging. The one and done, I'm not saying the era's done. I think you still need those type players. But what's been great is, 2 of the last 3 national championships, junior, senior-laden teams, defensive-heavy sort of teams. You have that one stud. Carolina had that one stud or two. Villanova, same thing. But they were a team effort. You had guys that weren't going to play in the NBA. Yes. They were 4-year players. So I think Will Wade's building it right. It's going to be a team-oriented sort of program, and you're not going to be bigger than the program. I think that's what's important about the suspensions. You're not bigger.
And you know what it comes down to? It goes back to the Nick Saban factor. The idea of the process is more important than the result. And that's key with Wade right now because he's paying attention to process. Now, when he has these superstars who have been stars their whole lives playing basketball, kids, can he get them to stay in that mindset and play together? That's the hardest part. Johnny Jones had a good team together for 1 year with NBA talent, had 3 different kids who could play in the league. He couldn't do it. Dale Brown, when he had his most talented team ever many years ago, speaking of LSU, Chris Jackson, Stanley Robbins, Shaquille O'Neal, it didn't work chemistry-wise. He did more with less because he could get guys to buy into what Dale Brown wanted, which was teams that played with passion and effort, which is what you look for. To get that combination is what gives you an opportunity to build an LSU in the SEC, a Tulane in the AAC, to be able to compete with the best in the country in an open college basketball world so that you can have the right mix of guys who come along, whether they're one-and-done guys or transfers, and those 4-year players you develop. There's no reason that you can't become the next Butler. You can't become the next Gonzaga, and a lot more schools are trying to do it.
No doubt about it. Let's shift to college baseball. A lot of unknowns this year going into the season. And let's start with the UNO Privateers, who seem to be banking on their pitching staff carrying them this year. Blake Dean has done a really good job in turning this around. We'll start with UNO, and I'll start with the voice of UNO Athletics. Tell us about this year's team.
Well, Blake Dean's a terrific young coach, and not just a guy who was a star as a player who's trying to make it happen as a coach and show up and roll the ball and bats out there and say, I'm Blake Dean. He's learning on the fly here as a head coach after sitting at the right hand of a legend in Ron Maestri, and he proved right away that he can maximize his talent on hand. Recruiting-wise, for a couple of years, he was able to hit the JUCOs hard and get some good bats in there. But then he figured out, you've got to be able to win your league. And he also figured out that he's pretty good at teaching kids how to hit and making them better there. He'd rather put his investment into pitching. How about 21 pitchers on the roster? And more kids that can throw 90-plus than anybody can remember out at UNO. And it starts with a guy who's returning in Brian Warzik, 9-3 last year, ERA near 2. In the Southland Conference, you've got to win like the schools that have won traditionally do. You look at Sam Houston, got to a super regional last year. Southeastern, perennial 40-win team now under Matt Reiser. They win with pitching and defense. That's what UNO is going to try to do now, and I have no doubt that they'll get the results by the end of the year that they're looking for, because now the right formula is in place, and you've got enough pitchers to play with where somebody should be able to emerge. Even though that league's pretty difficult, UNO's picked 7th or 8th. I think they're going to exceed those expectations.
Your thoughts on the Privateers?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke with Coach Dean this week, and it was fantastic just to sort of hear him say that. It's like, we've always been a hitting team. We're going to have to maybe switch it up a little bit. And he had a great attitude, because 3 players on first-team All-American, or on the Southland Conference first team, and then 2, one you're losing for the season, and you're really star catcher there, and the other for 2 months to start the year. That's hard to do, because you can never, plan for that and how you're going to do it. So he absolutely talked about the pitching and everything. Again, the other thing he touched on was just getting more local kids again, starting to get in and going out of state and trying to bring some other players in as well. So you're expanding the recruiting. He touched on, hey, you're learning on the job and on the fly, but you can just hear the confidence in him. He knows where they're going, and that's just the hard thing about it. It's like, I remember hitting the desk a little bit, like, man, it stinks that you're losing players like that, especially when you lose 60-plus home runs, essentially, from a year ago being offensively. But one of those things is when you have a leader and you know where you want to go with the program, and look, at the end of the day, look at the Astros, look at the Dodgers, look at the, see what they are. I mean, you have to have pitching. I mean, the offense was great in the World Series. So, you have to have pitching. And we talked with Paul Manerio as well on the show, and we were just going on and on. The College World Series last year was ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous. You look at all the different teams that had pitching, and it wasn't just some pitching. They had kids in the bullpen that were going to be starters this year that are going to be major league first-round pitchers. So you can never have enough pitching. So when you're saying that, hey, that's always the equalizer. You may not be able to hit the ball at the ballpark. You may not have a lot of those star athletes or the star big hitters. But one thing that you've definitely seen in college baseball, you can play small ball, you can win. So get the guy over from second, you can bunt, you don't have to be anything bigger or faster and something of that nature. But if you can pitch and strike people out and play defense, and that's what Blake said, that they'll have a shot.
No doubt. Talked about Southeastern. Talk a little bit about that club this year.
Well, it's impressive what they're able to do year after year, because now they can get that talent in Southeast Louisiana. I think Tulane's always tried to find the balance between getting local kids, but they feel like they can recruit nationally, and they certainly can. Well, Southeastern is really stuck to a South Louisiana base, and they've got a team with a Taylor Schwanner out of Holy Cross, who's a preseason All-American hitter, but they've always had a collection of pitchers who can really do it, and they're trying to move a couple of guys from the bullpen who have the kind of stuff to be starters, one coming off an injury, to be able to move forward. But they also have a kid who can pitch, who was a 4-year starter, varsity in the Catholic League, Brother Martin, Corey Giacone. So they have a mix of guys who have done it, and they never seem to have a shortage of being able to fill that weekend rotation and have enough in the bullpen. They are having to replace their ace, Max Scarola, who was really good, a 5th-round pick by the Reds. But I was speaking to Damon Sunday, the voice of the Lions, last night, and they're really confident. And here's the key. They have put in the effort to be a team that could win the conference tournament and make the postseason, then earn an at-large bid for the first time for the program. And they saw Sam Houston finally get to a super regional, and they feel like it's their turn. And they see that as, we're as good as those guys. It's our turn to be able to do that. And there's a confidence in the program and experience, because they do have 3- and 4-year players who have seen the process become successful. And Matt Reiser can coach any kind of style. And I think that Southeastern's really fortunate that he's there and not at his alma mater, Uptown.
No doubt about it. Speaking of Uptown, talk about the Green Wave. Travis Jude in his second year. He's rebuilding this program as well.
I mean, it was hilarious. When we spoke to him on the air today, I thought it was a college football recruiting class. 21 to 22 new faces. Yeah. Can you believe that? How do you find out what kind of baseball team you have? 3-12 was the start last year. I mean, that's what he was. And he took a little ownership of it. He said it was maybe his fault. He wasn't, learning on the job, sort of. It's like Blake, being a head coach, what it's like, and learning the players. That's kind of the key for him, really, this year, is just trying to learn where you're going to go with these guys, who's going to step up. He has an idea where he wants to go on Friday, Saturday. He doesn't know who the closer is going to sort of be in the bullpen. He said, hey, look, as important to me as the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning guys. So I think it's really the start. And the one thing that stood out to me, guys, was when you look at that schedule, the importance of having to win at home, and a ton of them, other than the 3-game series at Ole Miss before they go to Long Beach State in March 16th, everything else is a home game. You have UL, Southern Miss, all those teams are at home. So if you can get to mid-March and win most of your home games, you can kind of get started there. But that's going to be the big, that to me is easily the story when you look at Tulane. He has to learn and see what 21 to 22 new faces are.
Yeah. It's hard to talk about dynasties, but Delgado's got a little bit of a dynasty going. Joe Sherman, a guy that I grew up with in my neighborhood, knew his dad, Rags, great people, great family. His father, obviously, an icon in baseball here in not just in New Orleans, but across the nation. Joe Sherman's got it going on over at Delgado. They didn't make it to the College World Series last year, but they were there consecutive years. And watching him last night on Ed Daniels' WGNO Sports Zone, he's talking about pitching, that he's really relying on his pitching this year. Talk about Delgado, and man, how Joe has really kind of taken the baton from his dad and resurrected that program.
You can't talk about Delgado without talking about these schools we're mentioning, because you look at Southeastern, Tulane, UNO, LSU, they all have starters from Delgado pretty much every year. And the reason why is because Joe's able to take those kids who aren't getting the looks that they feel like they deserve, and they believe in him to get their opportunity for 2 years and develop. And he keeps sending kids to high major D1 schools because he understands the talent locally. You know, he was so smart with Kerr Shruney to open the doors and let all these programs that want to play there play at that park, the home park of the Dolphins. So he gets a first-hand look at all of them. And more importantly, he makes real connections with the local high school coaches. Not to use them, but he realizes, I'm the local junior college here to help you and help your kids. The hard work they've put in leading up to graduating from high school, they want to keep playing baseball. And Joe's honest about what these kids are capable of doing and becoming, and he takes care of them. And it's a family atmosphere. The whole Sherman family is Delgado baseball.
It's always been that way.
And he's
always been
he's one of the most genuine, unique, honest guys that you're ever going to meet in any span of coaching at any level. And I just can't say enough about him. I just think he's a tremendous person.
No, he really is. And he knows baseball too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, when you're talking about just the summer ball, I think it's as important as anything else. I mean, there's so much baseball being played now. And it's not just obviously during baseball season, but your high school level, you just don't play during your season. You play year round. And that's always, again, while we were talking about all the other schools here collegiately, can you imagine trying to recruit? I mean, there's so much talent that you would think it'd be easy, right? Just like trying to fish. I'm terrible at fishing. There's fish all over Southeast Louisiana. I'm terrible at fishing, believe me. I've tried. But that's just it. How do you hit the ones that fit your program, that fit your need? And there's always going to be a guy that he just didn't get the look. You know, that coach was there maybe for somebody else, and that day he went 0 for 3. But he's a good hitter. He's a guy that can be a spitfire. And it's always, I was thinking LSU in Florida when we were talking about Maneri. There's always that one guy, that aggravating guy that never strikes out, that'll get a base hit. He's not probably going to play in the majors, or if he is, he's way later to somebody get picked up. But he won't make an error. He has that funny haircut at the end of the year, but he's always the guy that keeps going. Stony Brook had, I mean, you name it. There's always a team, Coastal Carolina, that, you know, he never strikes out. He's stealing bases. He has something funny that he does with the rising back. That kid is probably somebody either comes from a JUCO or a Sherman that can find that kid and be like, hey, we can get you to somewhere else.
Cole Freeman.
Right. No,
that's the ideal example. Underappreciated by the college recruiters, but you know, Joe believed in him, and he became a star at LSU. And don't be shocked if he finds his way as a utility player on the bench of a major league team.
Well, again, he develops players. They get better at Delgado, and that's why, again, from Maneri to the rest of the coaches in Louisiana, they're looking at those kids coming out of Delgado.
When Paul Maneri shows up and asks, do you really think this kid can play for me? He wants to know. Joe's going to give him an honest answer. He's not going to steer him the wrong way. Not every kid works out. But if Joe says he can play for you, chances are, if you have a need at that position, you should sign him up.
You spoke to Maneri this week. Talk about the LSU Tigers.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time you speak with Paul, right, it's always the expectation level. I mean, the expectation level at LSU is it's College World Series, and you have to go win it. I told him, I'm like, hey, well, how would you describe 2017? So he goes, well, we won every championship possible except the one that everyone really wants. And it's true. It's crazy, right? SEC championship game, the SEC. I mean, you name it. it was unbelievable. And it was always, well, not always, but it's what has been sort of the case the last several seasons, where they'll start slow, they'll hit a sketch, and I mean, the world is ending, right? I mean, fire Maneri, LSU's not any good, and all they do is they heat up at the right time. And I always find, I don't know when you have your conversations with them too, is that I always find our conversations always go around, I don't know if people really understand how hard it is to win a national championship. Right. And that's why I brought up the pitching that was at the College World Series, that LSU had to face, that beat, yet Florida just had an excess of. And as he mentioned today, they were picked to finish 4th in the West and are 9th ranked in the country. 4th in the West of the SEC, 9th ranked in the country. 7 or 8 teams are ranked in the top 15, 25. I mean, think about that. That's ridiculous. I mean, how hard that is. So you got to make it out of the SEC, and then you have to try to host. I mean, it's crazy. I guess you get spoiled if you're an LSU fan,
sure
right? That we're supposed to host a regional. We're supposed to host a super regional. Look, you do have the advantage. I mean, the committee's like, hey, you're good enough. Of course we want you in Baton Rouge. The crowds, I get it. But you got to earn it. And it's crazy. I mean, they almost didn't, right? I mean, they had to go into the last 2 weekends of the year, easily the last month of the season. It wasn't a guarantee. Some places had LSU traveling for the regional, if y'all remember, and they wound up making it to the championship series. So there's talent. You have to reload. The one thing that I thought that stood out, guys, is he said for the first time since he's been there, 9 players, including the DH, all 9 players on the field, Louisiana kids. Yeah. That's nuts when you think about it. And you would think that that's been the case, but he's been there a while, and he's like, for the first time ever, included DH, all the players are going to take the field, other than the pitcher, obviously.
It's a national program.
Exactly.
And they've always recruited nationally. Your thoughts on the Tigers?
It's interesting when you talk about Paul Maneri coaching in the shadow of Skip Bertman. And you mentioned it, that people expect championships every year. What he's been able to do is handle that pressure and be his own man, and he holds his players accountable. He makes it a hyper-competitive environment all year round and throughout the season. Your job's always on the line. If you're going to play at an LSU, that's how it has to be able to compete in the SEC and try to make a run in the postseason. Maneri's been able to do that, and the thing that you look at this year's team about is you can have a Daniel Cabrera out of John Curtis who can step right in as a freshman and be a starter. You can get that from Louisiana when Louisiana provides it. A Zach Watson being a future high draft pick as well as an outfielder. Antoine Duplessis as a speedy leadoff hitter type who will play down in the order for LSU. But again, the state providing that, he's going to take advantage of it at home. But you have less than 12 total scholarships to fill a 35-man roster. You've got to deal with weird loan situations, whether they're in-state kids, whether they have tops, where they're coming from, and he's been able to manage that and keep LSU competitive each and every year. But this year, I think it's going to be pretty tough. There's a lot of question marks, and it starts with the weekend rotation. Caleb Gilbert goes from swing man, who was really good in the postseason. Now he's going to be your Friday night guy. Who knows? Zach Hess goes from fireballing, wild closer, going full effort for an inning or two. Now you're asking him to be your Saturday guy. And Todd Peterson's the Sunday guy for the moment, who hasn't done anything in 2 years and hasn't been in shape and is showing signs, but you have no track record. It's going to be really tough, and there's going to be a lot of movement in that pitching staff and in the bullpen, and Maneri's going to have to do his best coaching job to be able to compete in that league.
These guys nailed it, didn't they? Jude Young, Gus Katengell. We're going to take a break. We come back. We'll talk a little bit about the Pelicans. We'll talk some Saints. We'll go to your phone calls as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Don't go anywhere.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or AmcoFenceCompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Gus Katengell of 100.3 FM ESPN Radio in New Orleans and the voice of the UNO Privateers, Jude Young, also CrestCitySports.com and WGSO Radio. And of course, Gus is the voice of the Tulane women's basketball team. Guys, let's shift gears. We'll stay to basketball, talk about the Pelicans. There's been a change, okay? Boogie Cousins goes out. It's been well documented. All three of us have talked about it on our radio shows. I have been probably the biggest detractor to Boogie Cousins simply because I just think he's bogged down this team. The selfish play, the lackadaisical play on defense, the arguing with the officials. I mean, we saw such a small sample size of about 10 games where he started sharing the basketball more, where he was giving up that three-point shot to try to get a better shot, the lob into Anthony Davis. I mean, things started clicking, and then he ruptured the Achilles tendon. We'll talk about him in a moment, what they'll do with him going forward. Let's talk about where they are right now, because I like this team right now. I have enjoyed watching the last few games. There's energy. They're playing defense. Not that they're a great defensive team. They should be better when Solomon Hill returns, but there's some effort there. They're sharing the basketball. They're rebounding. Guys are playing with energy. I mean, Mirotic has been a great find for this team. A guy that can shoot the basketball, but again, he plays defense, and it's infectious, it's contagious. And oh, by the way, now Anthony Davis not having to acquiesce to, again, Boogie Cousins. He is now flourishing. We're seeing the Anthony Davis we've seen since he left the University of Kentucky here in New Orleans, taking over a game, the energy, going to the basket, scoring the basketball. You know, I'm not saying that this team is going to go into the playoffs and win a series. I'm just saying it's been enjoyable basketball over the last few games to watch. They're 31-26. They're the 8th seed. There's like 3 or 4 teams that again, are kind of bunched in at the bottom of the West. And guys, it's interesting about how they're playing basketball right now. The question is, as you get into after the All-Star break, where everything really starts to hype up. Teams that are contenders are putting their feet to the gas pedal. It's a tougher game in the second half of the season. It's even tougher when you get into that grind of the playoffs. How does this team perform when the ante is up after the All-Star break? But thus far, you got to like what you've seen out of this team, from Okafor, what he's been able to do, to Diallo, to Clark, to Liggins. I mean, everyone's contributing now. It's a different basketball team. Your thoughts on the Pels as we get to the All-Star break?
You have to give credit to Alvin Gentry, who I've probably been more critical of and have had lack of belief in than maybe a lot of people locally, because the transition from Cousins, where you were 6 over 500, winning that game against the Rockets when the injury happened, and still keeping this team afloat. And I think Dell Demps doesn't get enough credit. He's had some bad luck with the injuries, but then going and getting Mirotic, and he fits in so well to that style that really Gentry wants to play, where it doesn't bog down the way Cousins plays. You get much more movement. Guys get more touches and opportunities. You spread the floor, and you give Anthony Davis a chance to be able to go ahead and work. They're 5 games over 500 right now. They've won 3 in a row going into the break. Maybe Hill comes back. You hope he comes back and provides a defensive presence, but he's another guy who can run the floor, was developing into a 3-and-D guy that you need to spread the court, to give Drew Holiday room to work, to give Davis room to do his thing. I like what they have in place, not only short term, because they still might not make the playoffs. It's no guarantee. Right. Number 3 in the West right now, the Spurs. Only 2 less losses than the Pelicans, but they're 2 teams in 9th and 10th right behind them, and the Clippers, who haven't gone away, maybe short-term addition by subtraction, getting rid of Blake Griffin. And the thing about Utah, people don't talk about Quinn Snyder enough. He's the best young coach in the NBA, and he might be the best coach going in the league right now. What he's able to get out of his talent each and every year in a tough place to keep players. They are able to make trades and make decisions at the right times. Gordon Hayward leaves. They're still in it, and they're playing their best basketball right now. The West is so tough. But at least the Pelicans have a basis of they play a pleasing style, they're playing hard, and when we get to the Cousins part, I don't see any reason why he's not going to want to stick around, because in the end, that should have been the sole purpose of this season to begin with. You may not love him, Eric, but they've got to have Cousins stick around long term to build around those two big towers, those two stud big men, because that makes other folks want to play in a Me Too type of league. It's about super friends, and you've got to have a team that's fun to play for and has superstars that you believe, if I go with them, we can win a title.
We'll get to Cousins in a moment. Your thoughts on this version of the Pelicans now as we get into the mythical second half of the season?
It's crazy when you think of what it would be like if you actually played with effort and energy every day. Now, I understand it's easy for us to say. I get it. But that's the thing. You don't see the headlines or things like, even with the Cavs, they just weren't very good, right? I mean, but you didn't have LeBron go off and go, hey, do you feel like playing today? And that's the thing that's been so frustrating watching this Pelicans team this year is you can be up by 20-plus points on the Warriors. You can beat the Rockets. You almost beat them twice this year, first on the road. You can go to Boston and win. And then you lose to the Grizzlies. You lose to the Hawks.
Don't show up against the Sixers.
The Kings, right? It's just, well, at least the Sixers have the process and they're in a playoff race. But, I mean, you're losing to teams that are trying to lose. And that's just maturity, effort, and things. But it's not like they're a young team. So it's leadership, and it's also not just from the coaching standpoint and general manager standpoint, but you have to take ownership on the floor. And we always talk about this all the time on our show. How about you give a bleep sometimes, you know? I mean, when you come out lackadaisical and the effort is not there, the energy out there, and you get blown out at home, throw a chair, get a technical, send somebody in the camera well.
Is that Davis' responsibility?
That's what I was going to get at. It's easy to say it's Gentry's. I'm sure we've all been critical, right? And there is a lot of it. But at the end of the day, you're a grown man. And you have to hold others accountable. And I think that's the hardest thing. AD is not Jordan. AD is probably more along LeBron, and it took LeBron a long time to become the guy. He had to leave Cleveland before he became the guy that would get in your face. Now, he started doing that on Twitter, Instagram, stuff like a couple of years ago. But the LeBron we have now, where he acts like a GM, where he holds pressers, where he holds his team accountable, that was not LeBron in his first 7-8 years. So AD's more of the type of guy that probably leads by example, tries to go out there and play hard. But he's one of the few people who can get in Boogie's face. And to y'all's points, we get into him here in a little bit, Boogie's actually the guy that made a phone call a couple days ago and told him, get your head out of your butt and be aggressive.
And that's the importance of what we talk about nowadays a lot, whether it's in sports or politics. Are you an alpha or are you a beta? You've got to have an alpha or two on the team, like LeBron has certainly become with the Cavs. Clear the decks. We have to start over midseason. In season, you've got to have that leadership, and it shouldn't be Cousins making a phone call while starting his rehab from surgery. It should be Drew Holiday with the $126 million contract, Davis with the huge contract, proven superstar. You've got to have that in the locker room. Hey, Rajon Rondo can bring some of that with his experience and his attitude, but it's got to come from the big dogs in the locker room. There's only so much an Alvin Gentry can do if he doesn't have the right mix of personalities, because we know how important it is, whether you're a Greg Popovich with his style or what Phil Jackson was able to do. It was about manipulating personalities and getting the most out of your team most of the time, what it takes to prepare them for the season and keep them focused in season. That's where I question whether Gentry has that based on his track record. But you're right, you can't blame him in a players' league if the players that should step up, who make the most money, who are the leaders, don't step up and make sure that you don't blow 20-point leads or almost blow a 27-point lead to the lowly Nets. You can't do that.
You know, to the point you got coming up on Saturday, which I can't wait to watch, right? Shaq and Kobe sitting down, the new TNT series one-on-one. I love that. But when you take a look at some of the dominating championship teams, when you look at the Lakers when you had Shaq and Kobe, and you look at the Bulls with, you know, a pair of three-peats, those coaches get a lot of credit in how you manipulate the roster, stuff like that. But you had guys that stepped on the court and demanded excellence. And the tease that they used that we played on the air was great. It's Shaq saying, hey, look, after we won our first, I knew you would show up. I didn't care about summer and getting in shape. I got in shape once camp started. And Kobe says, that's what ticked me off about you. You didn't come out and work as hard as me. But that's Kobe, right? I mean, people love to criticize, he took so many shots, but that dude practiced, and we saw a video of him getting after players at practice, you know, when you had these young guys that didn't understand it. Michael. I mean, Jordan, we have Dino on our show, and I know he's been on yours as well. He did a tryout, like a 10-day contract sort of thing. You know, Sean Payton on Tuesday has players in. Like a tryout like that. Imagine Drew Brees comes in there and tries, you're working out a corner, and he goes after that corner. I mean, that's insane. That's what Jordan did. That's how he kept his edge. He went after guys trying out for a 10-day contract, but that's what he demanded. He said, you're going to go up against me at practice. I want to see if you can help me. And that's what it comes down to. I'm not saying it can't get there. It's just not there. Maybe we're starting to get there. But the next step, the next evolution of Anthony Davis that I want to see, and I think we're going to see, is a guy that cares wholeheartedly about winning, cares about ball. He's the best that you can have in the city in terms of it's not a me guy, he's not flashy, he's not getting in trouble. But that next evolution is demanding it from others and understanding. Like Chris Paul's a perfect example. Dude, off the court, he's your buddy. On the court, he will yell at you.
Sure.
I mean, you got to play well. And that's what it is. You got to have something like that. Again, it took LeBron almost 10 years.
Guys, I've been very, very critical of Dell Demps, and rightly so. He's made a lot of mistakes as the general manager, but I did it today on the show, and I've done it over the last couple of days. I got to give him a lot of credit. You know, in a move that was a desperation move, he brings in a Boogie Cousins. Okay, whether it works or not, we'll see how that kind of plays out. But when Boogie Cousins goes down, he goes out and gets a Mirotic. Now again, he re-signed Omer Ashik and had the Albatross contract, which has hurt this team. But ultimately, you knew you would have to send the number one pick to be able to get rid of that contract. You got rid of two older players in Allen and Nelson. But you bring back a guy who you got for next year, $12.5 million. This guy can play. He can play defense, which again was underrated. He can rebound. He can shoot the basketball. He brings energy and he brings effort every single night. You look at Emeka Okafor, a guy that was in the G League. When they signed him at 35, I kind of giggled. Okay, what do you do? The guy comes in. He looks like he did when he was a New Orleans Hornet. And again, he's a physical guy. Is he the answer? No, but he's a stopgap guy that can keep those fives off of Anthony Davis for a while. You talk about some of the other moves that he's made this season, and you got to give him a little bit of credit for on the fly kind of keeping this team together. That doesn't necessarily mean that I think he needs to keep his job, but I will give him credit for what he's done this season.
He's been able to squeeze every bit out of the salary space, as limited as it has been, he can
Miller
possibly
coming
do.
over from Europe,
Sure.
I mean, come on.
And the key is he made that commitment and the organization behind him upstairs, where we don't know how much they actually pay attention. They made a commitment to say, by taking on Mirotic in next year's salary, it's going to help us win next year. We're going to figure it out with re-signing Cousins and deal with maybe the tax, because we think like we can be a contender next year. Maybe the door opens. That effort needs to be made, because in the NBA, if you're not trying to compete for a championship, you're just treading water. And the Pelicans are the lowest valued franchise according to Forbes in the NBA, still worth $1 billion, and it's been a great investment for the Bensons, no question. But if they're going to be more than that, they have to win. The fan base has to believe. There has to be a reason to start doing more upgrades to the arena. You got to keep up with the Joneses. So they realize they've got to make the commitment right now. That's happening. And Dell Demps has been working off of the let's win for Mr. Benson. At least that's what we believe, by making these moves and trading away first-round picks, and he's taken grief from it. But if Drew Holiday wasn't hidden damaged goods, if Tyreek Evans could have at least played to his potential, there were signs that it was working and at least being a playoff team then. Now it looks like they've taken another step in the right direction, and that's why they have to keep Cousins. And having Mirotic around means they're going to have bigs, three bigs, a combination of which no other team in the league can match, and that's a heck of a group to build around.
Your thoughts on Demps, and then I want to get both your thoughts on the future Boogie Cousins in New Orleans.
My thing is, either with Demps or anything, I would just love to see this organization be run like the Saints, if that makes any sense. What I mean by that is, would you think Sean Payton or Mickey Loomis would tolerate lackadaisical effort, games where they just didn't show up? No. As a matter of fact, Sean Payton cleaned house, right, the last several years. 7 new assistant coaches.
Right.
No, I hear you.
NBA's a
But my
players'
point
league.
is, it was not tolerated.
Right.
Because that's
Agreed.
their money, and that's how they win, and that's their cash cow.
You look at other teams, and
absolutely.
look at
Jason
Boston.
Kidd with Milwaukee. I mean, they were a playoff team.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the NBA, there is like that. And what I mean is, treat them like that. Is you need to have the same level of funds, attention more than anything else. I do the mythical board meeting, right? I don't even know if this is how it works. But let's say you walk into, I don't know, somewhere on the second floor, and there's Dennis Lauscher sits there, and it should be to the left of the table. There's Mickey and there's Sean, and all right, what we got? Today with the Saints, what we got? We got game up, Sunday, whatever. And then looks to the right, and there's Demps and Gentry. I mean, it should be, in other words, somebody should be looking left and right, and it should be equal footing, as opposed to, I don't know. Sometimes Mickey says at the Senior Bowl 2 years ago, and people give me more credit than I'm involved in or not. Well, then who is though? I mean, so they got to be held accountable, right? I mean, we all do a better job when we do think there's a little fire. It's nothing wrong to have a little fire under you. So I guess that's why I look at where I would like to see this organization be. Look, you've made your bed. There's nothing you can do. They're going to go close to the max. I don't think they go 5 years, 175 or something like that, but it's going to be close to the max. They have to do it. And I think that discussion's already been made, especially when we go back to the conversation with Boogie posting a video of him rehabbing. That's not a coincidence. And I think him making the call to AD's invested, he's watching. He could have checked out. If he didn't want to be here, he wouldn't have cared. He wouldn't be telling Anthony Davis to do that. So, and then I go back to really the second to last game before he got hurt, where he fouled out. It was a double overtime thriller to the Bulls. And you saw the first person to congratulate Boogie was AD jumping his. So back to his point, in a players' league and what it is, you have those two pieces. Does different leadership, get more results? Because again, to his point, it's just nuts. I mean, you're 3 losses away from the 4th seed, the 3rd seed. Yeah. But you're a half game from being out of the playoffs. You're 1 loss away from, the 4th and 5th. It's crazy. So if you could have had those games against the Kings and the Hawks and just
and Gentry talked about it last night.
Right. I mean, you would.
You'd be in a different situation. I think it's crazy talk, okay, to want to max out a guy that's coming off an Achilles tendon injury, no matter how the medicine has advanced in terms of that injury. And a prove-it-to-me deal for 2 years, I'd go for that, but I don't know if Boogie Cousins goes for that.
No chance.
Your thoughts?
You don't have a choice. You have to do it. And the one thing that you can take solace in as an Achilles injury, which is so crucial when you talk about a guy's ability to get up, that's really not his game. Yeah. It's rooting down on the block or playing at the top of the key and even behind the
But you don't want him to
line.
turn into a 6'11" jump shooter.
No, you don't. But at the same time, he should be able to rehab from that and be what he is. And you really have to take the chance. I just don't think there's a way you can gamble and not re-sign him. And I think he definitely wants to be back. He's a Mobile guy. I know he likes being down here. I think he loved being, not what was going on in the organization, but he liked being in a smaller market in Sacramento and being the guy there. It just didn't work out because, well, they're far more incompetent than what we complain about the Pelicans' issues over the last few years. I mean, I think he wants to be here and lead. And the thing is, he is a leader that you absolutely have to have. And he does play off of Davis well. They worked hard in the offseason together. They were learning each other on the floor, and then we're just getting there. I think there's more to see out of those two playing together and leading this team.
2 things. A, I agree with you. Early in the season, like, hey, stop. This point center thing, why you're not the Warriors. So it's hard because, to your point, you bring in a head coach to try to run a Warriors offense, run and gun and 3-point shooters. Bye-bye, Eric Gordon becomes the 6th man of the year. Right, guy was never healthy, miraculously.
What did I say about Beta?
Right. I mean, you lose 2 3-point shooters since you hired him, right? They all go to the Rockets, and you see how good they're playing over there. Other guys that you bring in that didn't work out, or, Moore is what it is. You might see a good night from him, whatever. Hill, I mean, he's not offense. So, and here's 2 big guys. Make it work. Adjust. It's not his DNA. It's not a coaching DNA. So, if you can get what you saw in those last 10 games before he got injured, it's fantastic. I mean, in some of those wins, Gentry saying, Boogie's coming in the huddle saying, hey, my guy's guarding me. Dwight Howard's guarding me. He's not letting me go anywhere. So I'm going to go to the top of the key, leave those 2 lanes open. Drew Holiday drives to the basket. Again, don't take stupid jump shots. Drive to the basket. You know what I loved about AD's, big game back on Wednesday? He had 11 free throws. Attacking the basket, go to it. So
big difference in what we saw
exactly
earlier.
Right. Stop with these 3-point shooting, and then because what would aggravate me is we played the sound of Gentry going, well, we just have to live. It's a good shot, coach. if you're having a good look in your opening, you're missing it, maybe you're not a three-point shooting team.
Amen to that. And then again, I don't want to hear the other team is shooting so well.
I'm so tired of it.
Okay,
They're really good over there.
Try to defend.
Yeah,
Close
they're
out
so
on a
good
shooter.
over there.
The program says it, but it applies in the NBA. Sacrifice a good shot for a great
There's no
shot.
doubt about it.
Exactly
That's it in a nutshell.
That's it.
And that's the difference between this team now and what they were doing. That's the difference between that stretch of 10 games where Boogie and this team was playing so well to what was going on in the rest of the season.
And my second point to what you're talking about with Boogie, what do you do with him? All it takes is one team. It takes one crazy organization.
Look,
because I'm with you. I think the right deal would be a 3-year deal with a 30-year player option. Right. You're guaranteed 2 max. And you're like, hey, we love you, we believe in you. But we want to build around you. We want to build around this team. If it's 2 years, whatever. But here's your max. So go rehab. You got your money. Sign it now, whatever. But all it takes is one team to go, hell, I'll take Boogie at 50%. Right. I'm going to give you the 5-year deal. And now guess what you have to do? You have to match it.
Well, and the problem with that is...
And then you run the risk, if you don't do it, that he thinks you're disrespecting him. Yeah. And now he doesn't want to take your offer. And now, so it's just...
And you're in cap hell because if you don't sign him, you don't have any money to sign anyone else.
And guess what? His stock's better now, even with the injury, than it was when you acquired him.
Yep. Exactly.
Guys, you're not dragging me over to your side of the table.
You have to, Eric.
It's crazy. I think it's crazy talk to want to max this guy out right now. Look, we got a minute for each one of you guys, really about 35 seconds. Does Breeze sign before free agency?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it depends on the flexibility that they feel like they need in free agency, whether they figure out what's going on the market first and who they can sign at the positions that they're going to target to try to improve this team in a hurry and make sure they can be a Super Bowl contender. I'm going to guess he doesn't because they need that flexibility early on.
So you don't think he'll sign before free agency
I don't
starts?
think he will. I think he's going to let it play out to help the organization, not to hurt it. That's just my guess.
Okay.
I think he does. I know you have a lot of different quarterbacks that have signed some big deals and everything, and a lot of people can look at it. He's not on that. He's not Garoppolo. He's not Cousins. That's not what it is. You have Breeze saying he gave us the date. He said it. He said it has to be before March 14th. If not, it costs them more.
Right. The
after
$18
March
million
14th. Exactly right. So, and you have Mickey Loomis saying, no, we want to get it done. I absolutely think, it's got to sit down and get it done. I think it does happen before March 14th.
How much a year?
I think 23 to 25. I think 2 years, 25 mil.
It's more of a question of what's going to be guaranteed short term versus extend long term, but probably going to average about that.
I don't think it's a hometown discount, but as I've been saying, I do think it's a cap-friendly deal.
Yeah. It has to be because he wants to win now and he knows they have the chance, so he's more open to it.
Bigger question, did it go quarterback in the first round?
They're not going quarterback. Why would you go? They're not going quarterback. Again, you'll have him for 5 years. They're not going quarterback. They need other pieces right now. You're trying to win a championship. The bigger question is, Chase Daniel's a free agent. Yeah. Who's the backup quarterback next year? That's a big question. We'll do that next time you guys come on the show. Gus Katengell, ESPN 100.3 FM here in New Orleans. Jude Young of WGSO Radio, CrestCitySports.com, voice of the UNO Privateers and voice of the Tulane Green Wave, Gus Katengell. I'm your host, Eric Asher. I just do a radio and TV show. Thanks so much for tuning in. There's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also, you can catch us statewide. That's Friday nights at 9 o'clock on Pelican Sports Television. You can catch all the previous episodes of this program at ericasher.com. We can also listen live, download the podcast of my radio show, which is now noon to 2 on Sports 1280 and 101.1 FM HD2. The iHeartRadio app is also a great way to take the show with you anywhere. All right, thanks so much for watching tonight. I want to thank our guests, Gus Katengell and also Jude Young, also Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Trey Lopez, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks for watching another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here for another one next Thursday night.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.